Hi, Bible stories with Blish. Today I want to talk about Pa AB, Pa Abraham. You know, we're always singing, Abraham's blessings are mine, Abraham's blessings are mine. I hope his obedience is ours too, because I checked it and Abraham obeyed God to the latter. The Bible will always say, and God appeared to Abraham, and God appeared to Abraham. It wasn't just that God was appearing to Abraham for fun. For each time God appeared to Abraham, he gave him instructions. And the spark in it always was that Abraham obeyed. Even though he had his moments where there was a time where God told him about the circumcision and was giving him the promise of Isaac. It wasn't just Sarah that laughed. The Bible says Abraham put his face to the ground and laughed in his heart. Do you understand? So it wasn't that the instructions came easy. Some made him laugh, some made him wonder, but at the tail end he obeyed every instruction. And I've seen that those instructions came precept upon precept, lines upon lines, because when God appeared to Abraham and said, move to this place, he did. Then God appeared to him and said, do this, do that, do this, do that. You know, it was precept upon precept, and Abraham obeyed. For every instruction that later came, he relied upon an obedience that he had obeyed. So when the Lord came to Abraham and then struck a covenant with him about circumcision, normally Abraham would be like, you dey whine. So because every time he comes to tell me do this, I should circumcise myself at 99. You know, but Abraham did. Not just Abraham, with his son Ishmael and every other male that was his, even as a slave or by relations, he had them circumcised at 99. Do you know what that means? Circumcision, like your flesh. What if it had gone wrong? What if complications arise? And then imagine one of Abraham's staff go back home to his TTC wife, and then she's like, oh yeah, this is that time of the moon, let's try to conceive. And he's saying, sorry, my boss got us circumcised earlier today. And she's like, what? I knew it. This is your boss. He doesn't want us to have a child. Because he doesn't have a child, he also does not want us to have a child. Because circumcision, at what age, from where? But Abraham obeyed. And it was after he obeyed, same angels appeared to him to give him the promise of Isaac. And then when they came, Abraham quickly stood up and brought water for them to wash their legs. You know, if it's us now, you dey house, I know the house, because you're worried about the Hollandia yogurt you want to buy, or one plate of noodles that you want to cook. I know the house. And that's how Abraham would have missed out on the promise, that even though he got himself circumcised and his whole household. Imagine lying to the angels or telling his servants to go and tell the angels when they're like, tell them say I know the house, tell them say I know the house, you know. But he obeyed for every instruction, and they gave them water. And then he was in my area to do a mama, where I want to see water, give them, make them wash leg. You know, so sometimes it's the obedience. The Bible is telling us to obey instructions. For every promise, there has to be an obedience to an instruction before it materializes. So maybe God is telling you to give that your last 10K, and you're like, when you last 10K, or God is saying, call that person, talk to this person, but your ego is at stake. You don't want your ego bruised, you know, that kind of thing. But this year is the instructions we obey that will give us the results we've been looking for. That's just it. You know, there's a difference. Isaac came from the covenant. Abraham had Isaac after he got circumcised. He had Ishmael before the circumcision. So you can see that the promise, the difference is clear. Not that Ishmael was wealthy. It had nothing to do with wealth. It's just the promise, and that's where the lineage of Christ came from. You get? So the obedience this year 2026, may God help us to obey. May God help us to obey. Bye.